Welcome all, Ben here from EWPRO. First of all, I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and now let's get into the weekly outlook. So DXY, nothing's changed on the daily. I'm still looking for this to possibly come down and break the lows here in this correction here. On the H4, you've got to be very careful buying. Like I mentioned last week, we got a nice impulse down. I'm waiting for some sort of a correction in here. We get a nice correction in here, well, then we can look for downside. At this stage, you've got to be very careful with the buys because we do have a possible bear hidden there. So, yeah. I'd be more interested in the sell after we get some sort of a correction. And there doesn't look to be a complete correction there at this stage. We are getting higher highs here on the H1. But, yeah. The only way I'd really buy this is if we get a really impulsive move up in here, breaking this top, and then a correction. Well, then you could look for a buy. Other than that, I'm pretty much, I'd still be going with the trend and looking for a sell. AU, still possibly more upside here. Up to this 100 fib on the daily. On the H4, we're waiting for this correction. Pretty much the same as last week. We've been waiting for this correction in here, and we're starting to get that now. So, yeah, we're looking for... Yeah, you can't really look for a buy setup at this stage. But, yeah, ideally, you know, we get another one down in here, giving us bullish divergence in here, and then we can start to look to buy to go and break the top for that A, B, C, up to that daily 100 fib like I showed. GU, this is looking very corrective here, but like I've gone over for the last few weeks, this can be a, well, this can be a flat here for more downside, like this A, B, and a C up in here, a flat, before we get that A, B, C. But either way, on the H4, we can still get another fifth wave up in here, which you could trade if you get a nice setup. We're still waiting for this correction to be over. We're looking at this time factor here. And then I'd be looking for a buy just for that wave 5. EU, this one on the daily hit the target. It hit that 100 fib. It bounced off of it. The problem is it didn't fall over. It's very similar to GU on the H4. I'll be looking for a wave 5 up. So we're starting to get a correction in here. Ideally, we get a bull hidden, which I dare say we will, and then we can look for a wave 5 up. I would be targeting this 100 fib here again, where it bounced off over here. You know, you've got to be careful of this 100 fib here because we may get another bounce off of that. So that would be my first target in that wave 5 if I get an excuse me, if I get an entry in this. But this isn't complete yet, this correction in here. Need a larger correction, a similar size to this over here. And then we can start to look for buys. NU, this one never went like many of the others. I was looking for that A, B, and a C up in here, up to that 100 fib. Instead, we got this very large flat on the H1. I'm still looking at that as a flat, like I've mentioned, until this low's broken here. You know, I'm looking at this as a correction. I'm looking for at least 3 up in here. Ideally, it turns motive. You know, we have a really nice impulse up. We're getting a correction now, so it definitely can start to look for buys. For at least 3 up, and more than likely this will turn motive and we get 5 up in here. So really just waiting for that correction to complete and get a buy set up. GY really taken off. The Bank of Japan has lifted the cash rate for the first time in 30 years. So, yeah, it is going a little bit further than I would have liked. We can get this W, X, Y, X2 and a Z up like I've shown. And then we get this A, B and a C. Larger correction. And then we get that wave 5 up on the weekly. H4, you know, overall we're getting all this bearish divergence, so you got to be very careful. You know, like I mentioned last week, you can really only trade with the trend here, and the trend is obviously up. You're just scalping though. So again, you know, if you got a correction in here, a little correction on the lower time frames, you could scalp to go and break the tops. It's just scalping though. Other than that, there's really nothing on it. You know. You white, looking at this as all a correction, like I've mentioned, and we get an A, a B, and we get a C down in here. And then this may turn more complex as well, like with an A, B, C, and then an A, B, C, completing a larger correction. Very similar to last week. We're looking for a C up in here. It's hit the target. It's going past the. This is turning motive, you know. We've gone past that 100 fib here, so I wouldn't be surprised if that 161 gets hit now. You could look for a I really got to take them off and change it to, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I'll be looking for a 1 to wait for this wave 3 to finish, and then you trade a wave. Well, you wait for a wave 4 and then trade a wave 5 up. Or you could go down onto the lower time frames and look for an A, 1, 2, 3, get a wave 4 in here and a wave 5 up, scalping up to that 161.8. I'd be using that as your target. You got to wait for this correction in here before you can trade that wave 5 up. UCAD, I'm looking at this like W, X, Y, X2 and a Z down. We're getting that wave Z down. Oops, wrong time frame. So H4, nothing's changed. We're waiting for this correction, possibly up to this 38.2 or 50 fib retracement. So we're just waiting for that, and then you can trade this wave 5 down once we get this correction completed. We're looking for a time factor here, you know. So there's still plenty of room for this time factor. Until we get this time factor here, then you start to look for that 5th wave down. The Swissy, not much to do on this at all. I'm looking for more downside. We've got that A, B, and a C. Still looking for more downside. Looking at this as a correction in here for more downside. It's pretty much done nothing all week. You know, we're going sideways here. It looks very bearish. So if anything, I'd be looking for a sell. You know, just for some sort of an A. Oh, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. Ideally, it goes and breaks the lows, and then we can start to look for buys for longer term. Other than that, there's really not much there. EG, like I've mentioned, over the last month or more, we got on the daily, we got the 5 up. We're waiting for a larger correction here. It is possible that this is complete as like an A, B, and we get a C down in here, and that's a complete correction, and then we get more upside. Very difficult to buy up here. I'd be waiting for, uh, more downside and get a better entry. H4, we're getting a bear hidden here. We're getting a bear hidden in here. So ideally, this does come down and break the low. And then, if you get a bullish setup on the lower time frames, you could look for a buy for that flat that I showed. But we need this one down first because we have that bear hidden. So ideally, we get a lower low, impulse up on the lower time frames, bullish correction, and then we can look to buy. WTI finally broke the low here. If you've been following me for a while, I've been saying for a very long time, I hope this low here gets broken, and we finally did break it over here. This is looking very choppy, but there's 2 scenarios here. We either get this wave up in here for this larger C, or if I go down to the lower time frame, what we've been looking at is this correction here. We've been looking at this as a correction because it's so choppy. It has broken the low. So more than likely, we just get an A, a B, and a C up in here as a flat, a running or expanding flat, and then we get more downside. So definitely looking for buys. If you get any buy set up on it, you definitely can look for that buy. You again, we got to be very careful because we don't have any bullish divergence here. And we have a possible bear hidden. So you've got to be very careful buying. You really got to go down onto the lower time frames, and when you get a buy set up, you take it and get it to break even, because this here may just be an A, a B, and a C up, and then we get more downside, and that bear hidden there plays out. So yeah, be careful with the buys at this stage. But if you do get any buy set up, I'd be more interested in looking for a buy than a sell at this stage. Gold's right up the top of the market. I'm looking at this as a B wave in here, and we get an A, B, C. If I just go down to the lower time frame, so you can see how choppy this is in here. So I'm looking at that as a B wave. We get a C down. If you get any sell set up, I'd be looking for the sell. I'm not really interested in the buy right up the top of the market. H1, we got all this bearish divergence, so really looking for a sell setup. Any sell setup you get, you definitely can look for the sell. There is no sell setup on it at this stage. Silver, very similar. We got a nice impulse up in here. I'm waiting for this B wave. I need this B wave here before I can look to buy again. Other than that, you're just scalping up the top. Like I mentioned last week, you're pretty much just scalping, going with the trend. You're getting corrections, and you can scalp them. We've got a correction in here. You can clearly see it's a correction, and it's gone up and broken the top. That's pretty much all you're doing, just scalping. You definitely want to be at break even at the break of the tops. Yeah, ideally we get a nice impulse down now and a correction, bearish correction, and then we can look for a sell. We do have bearish divergence, so it's only a matter of time before we get that larger correction, that B wave on the daily that I mentioned. Bitcoin, we got a nice impulse down. I'm waiting for this correction in here, and then we can look for a C down. This is a waiting game now. You've got to wait for this correction. And then we can look for that C down. So at this stage, I'd be pretty much leaving it alone. H4, we are looking for that wave 5 down. It hasn't broken the low. Looking at this like 1, 2, 3, 4, and we get a fifth wave down in here. This may be an A, B, C in here, a flat, and then we get another one up in here for an A, B, C, and then we get that fifth wave down. Either way, need this low here to be broken. Ideally, that does get broken, and then we can start to look for buys. This is very choppy to sell, so it's going to be very difficult to sell for this wave 5. It hasn't really given us a nice entry, so yeah, I'd be waiting for this low to be broken and then start to look for buys. Yeah, I mean, if you get a nice sell set up, you can look to sell just to go and break this low. I'd be targeting the 161.8 and the 123.6. I'll just put them on here to show you. So we're looking at the 161.8 and the 123.6 as your targets. So that 123.6 is your first target, 161.8 as your second target for that wave 5. S&P 500 right up the top of the market. Again, we're very close to this W1 wave 5 second target, that 161.8. So, we are looking at this as a flat in here. If I just change that to dashed lines like it should be. But yeah, we're looking at this as a correction here. Again, you can buy it just to go and break the tops. And I'd be watching this 161.8, that second target on the weekly. More than likely we'll get a lot of resistance here. So yeah, but we do have an impulse up in here. So if we get a nice correction in here and a buy setup, you can look to buy to go and break the tops. AU200, we got a nice impulse up in here. We're waiting for this correction. We got a nice impulse down, so we're waiting for this correction. We need 3 down, and then we get this A, a B, and a C. H4, waiting for this correction. We're starting to get this correction in here. It does look very corrective, so we must have some sort of a flat in here for an A, B. We get a C up. Ideally, this doesn't turn motive. We just want to see an A, B, C here. If we just get an A, B, C, well, then we can start to look for that larger A, B, C. The FTSE, very similar to the other majors. We got a nice impulse up. We need a correction here. This may give us a flat in here, and then we get more upside. We need a nice correction, though. As you can see on the H4, I do have this as a B wave. So ideally, we get this C down. This, at this stage, because this top has not broken this top over here, more than likely it would be a regular flat. But if this top gets broken, well, then we'll be looking at it running or expanding flat before we get more upside. There is no sell for this C wave down yet. So, there's really not much to do on this. You got to be very careful. This can give us like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we get another flat in here, and then we get a wave 5 up. If you do get a nice move down in here, and it's got a bull hidden on the lower time frame, well, then you could look for a buy for this flat, for this, a wave 5 up for that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you need this down and then a nice, I'd want a bull hidden on either M15 or M30 before I start to look for that wave 5 up. Lastly, the DAX. This is one that's already possibly given us a correction, completed the correction. Looking at that A, all this is a B wave, and we get that C up. Very similar to what we were looking at last week. Did get a nice correction in here. This can be like an A, a B, and a C in here running flat. I don't really like it. This is a B wave because it really went too far. This B wave went way past the 161.8 extension, so which we don't really like to see in a B wave. But yeah, either way, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. More than likely, this will turn motive because of what's happened on the daily. We already had that larger correction after this impulse. So, this could really take off. So, again, I hope you enjoy your Christmas break. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you out there next week.